Exceeding Expectations, episode 58. Welcome to Exceeding Expectations with me, Tony Wynyard. This is the podcast where we give you ideas on how you can give your customers better experiences, and the benefits to your reputation far exceed the effort you put in. You get better reviews, referrals, recommendations, rebookings. If you like this episode, why not share it with someone you think may get some value from it? It would be great if you could leave a review for us on iTunes. And if you've got any suggestions on people that you would like to hear interviewed on this podcast, please do let me know. You can send an email to Tony at exceedingexpectations.me, or you can just pop into the Facebook group, which is called Exceeding Expectations, and put a post in there about any particular people you would like to hear interviewed. This week's episode is with Daniel Ramsey, so let's hear from Daniel. And my guest today is Daniel Ramsey. How are you, Daniel?
I'm great, Tony. Thanks for having me.
No problem. And you're in, I presume, sunny Sacramento?
Yes, it's beautiful here. We're in California, and the weather is awesome.
And so tell the listeners who aren't familiar with what you do, what is your background? What is it you help people with, Daniel?
Sure. So, again, my name is Daniel. I own a company called MyOutDesk, and we're a virtual professional company. And so for folks that you've never heard of a virtual professional, basically we help businesses scale by providing high caliber leverage. And that leverage is, in our case, in the Philippines.
And how long have you been doing that?
Yeah, so we're on our 12th year right now. I started using virtual professionals back in 2007, and we got our first client in April of 2008. We have the check hung up in the office, and so yeah, we've been doing this for 12 years.
So how did that come about?
That's a great question. Well, I'm an entrepreneur, and what's great about being an entrepreneur is, we have ADD, and we like to start things, and we don't like to finish things, and we typically have 12 irons in the fire at any one given time. And
have you got a camera looking into my office? Right?
Yeah. Well, and probably if you're listening right now, and if you own a business or you lead a business in any way, you absolutely know what happens to your to-do list, so the origin story, it's pretty simple. I'm on my honeymoon, and you'll love this, Tony. I'm in Guatemala, and we're in a Francis Ford Coppola resort. So we're in this rainforest kind of place, and we're overlooking this huge lake, and we've just gone to Tikal, which is kind of Mayan ruins, and we did this whole day of touring. And I'm newly married. I'm on my honeymoon. And my wife is back in the room. It's 1 a.m, and I have this photo of myself working at the bar, basically, with candlelight and my laptop. And I think, the bartender is speaking Spanish, and I speak a little bit of Spanish. And basically, he's making fun of me because he knows that my beautiful wife is back in our bungalow, and I'm there working. And so at that moment, I knew something in my life had to change. I needed to have more freedom, and I needed to be able to take vacation and keep. I wanted to stay married, and so we got back from that trip, and I completely changed everything about how we ran our business.
And how easy or difficult was that?
It was hell. I'm not going to lie. It was really hard. And for your listeners, imagine if you are, and there's probably some people that are listening to this, and this is your story. I was doing everything. I was selling. I was delivering. I was, looking at the financials, and I was putting together the marketing, and I was making sure that everything was working correctly, and that the clients were happy, that my employees were happy. I had my fingers in a lot of different pots, which served my ADD, which 100%. But what it wasn't serving was, I didn't go on vacations often. I wasn't getting to the gym. I I was the heaviest I'd ever been in my life. And all of these things compounded to me knowing I needed to make a change.
And so what was the first step? I mean, how did it come about that you ended up working with people in the Philippines?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a pretty simple step. We put a job out there in the Philippines. We just put hey, this is the role that we wanted to fill. And, we had somebody answer who was actually really talented. And my first, you'll love this story, because my first job was business cards and kind of rebrand of my business. And at that time, this is 2007. The world was crashing and falling apart everywhere, and so I had to rebrand my business to take advantage of that changing atmosphere. And I paid a company in California $1,000 to give me some options for the rebrand. And this virtual professional in the Philippines, charged me almost close to nothing and provided multiple options. And to be honest, the $1,000 that I paid the California-based marketing firm, who had all the street cred and all of that, my virtual professional did a much, much better job of creating that vision for us.
But did you have initially any sort of qualms about, the Philippines, I'm not sure if they're going to do a good job, or how, what was your feeling about it?
Yeah, I honestly, I rejected the idea up front. At that time, my brother and I were working together. We had purchased a bunch of real estate, and he had brought the idea, and I was like, so I get it when a client says, well, I don't know how you're going to do this work virtually. Like, I don't understand how that's going to happen, because I was that guy. I was that guy back in 2006 and 2007 who was like, I don't think it'll work. So it took crisis to, it took getting married, realizing that I wanted to stay married and maybe one day have some kids, and it took that crisis to really kind of change my mind about global talent. And back then, internet wasn't awesome, and Skype was brand new, and so there was limited ability to really take advantage of this global workforce, and that's really what we're talking about doing. If you're listening right now and you own a business, you can buy a soda in the West. It costs $2, right? Regardless of where you buy it, it's about $2. You go to the Southeast Asia or any other, what we would consider developing country, and that same soda is 50 cents,
I lived in Southeast Asia for 7 years, so I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Right. So food and drink and help in your office, everything's just a quarter of the cost. And so, what I did is I said, well, I need to grow my business. I'd like to scale, and gosh, I get to save all this money at the same time. And so, it just, at some point, it just made a lot of sense.
And so how long did it take you before you realized that there was a dearth of a surplus of quality in the Philippines, of a lot of talented people?
I'll give you an example. Last year, we had over 30,000 applicants apply to work for our company. And so if you're listening to this podcast, my favorite comparison is like, if I want to hire somebody today, I have to write a job description, write an ad, which is different than a job description, then put it out there online. Then I've got to do a phone interview with like 150 people who apply. I find out that half of them work for McDonald's and aren't real salespeople. And then I get down to 10 or 20 that I want to interview. Then I schedule an interview. Then I do a background check and all of that. And all of that takes a lot of time as an entrepreneur. It's just, it can be 30 to 40 hours in an entire day. And what we've done at MyOutDesk is we've created a process so all of that is cut down to 2 to 4 hours, because we've systematized putting ads out in the Philippines, doing the phone screens, doing the FBI grade background checks, doing all that work. And we had last year close to 30,000 applicants, and yet we only hired 2% of them. So we put together a really kind of streamlined process for sorting who's really a salesperson, who's really a marketing person, and who's really an administrative assistant. So those are the kind of 3 areas that we help. And, honestly, it was immediate, because when we put an ad out, we get hundreds, if not thousands, of applicants for each ad. So the available talent pool just in one city is, hundreds of thousands of people per skill set. So it's pretty wild, actually, Tony.
And do you supply people just sort of for one-off jobs, or is it for kind of full-time work, or what is it you do?
Well, we're full-time employers, so think of us as a staffing company. We help entrepreneurs find and staff talent, and we do it really quickly. So there's a lot of companies out there. One of my favorites is 99 Designs. If you need a new, and this stuff didn't exist when we first started, 12 years ago, but now it's pretty prevalent. So, there's a lot of project-based companies, but there aren't very many what we call ourselves marriage sites, for virtual talent. So think of all the other ones as dating sites, and we're really a marriage site.
And so what would be the benefits of using someone from, that you supply over hiring someone in your local town?
Well, there's a ton. First of all, like the first thing that we talked about was just the time frame it takes to find somebody in your local office, all the damage and headspace of just hiring someone physically. And depending on where you are in the world, there are a lot of labor laws that apply. So, with us, no labor laws apply. We're an entity in the U.S. to be in contract with our clients, and then we're an entity in the Philippines to be in contract with our people. And we comply with all the labor rules over there, and we have, all the insurances required, a CPA, an attorney on staff, and, we give them medical pay and vacation pay and all of the things that really, really matter to keep somebody happy, because as an entrepreneur, the biggest, challenge to scaling a business is employee turnover. And so our whole world is around creating indispensable virtual professionals for our clients. And so when you think of, I don't have to buy them office space, I don't have to buy them a computer, they provide their own internet, I don't have to worry about workers' comp or the government insurance. Daniel and MyOutDesk takes care of all of that. There's a load of positive reasons to actually explore our opportunity.
And then as far as actual pay is concerned, I suppose there's a big difference there as well.
Yeah, and so we did a survey last year and just asked our clients, like, hey, how much have we saved you? Like, what if you were to because we serve people in Canada and the U.S. It sounds like we might even have some people over there in England now. Now that we're doing this with you, Tony. But yeah, our clients last year told us that we've saved them a total of $55 million US dollars in just the comparison. And our 60 to 70-ish% is typically is of the cost of hiring somebody local is typically what we charge.
So say someone listening to this is thinking, it sounds interesting, but I'm worried about communication. Yeah, is a communication going to be a problem? What would you say to that?
Yeah, in the beginning, you're spot on. Back in 2007, 2006, when we first started kind of doing this for our own business, for our own entrepreneurial journey, I think that would have been a real concern. But now, you have Zoom, you have Skype, you have Ring Central, you have all these video platforms and phone systems that make communicating, super easy. So a free one is Google Hangout. You can literally feel like you're right there in an office with somebody doing a Google Hangout, and it's completely free. You have FaceTime on Facebook. There's just a whole host, and we give people a guide to virtual success, because it really is, Tony, one of the things that we help people with. It really is a challenge to convert. And here's a really interesting kind of stat Fortune 500 and the Fortune 2000 across the world, they've been outsourcing since the 70s and 80s. So they've been doing some version of virtual professionals since the 70s and 80s. Yet entrepreneurs, the small and medium-sized businesses, the businesses that make up the majority of the businesses out there in the world globally, we haven't really embraced this concept of labor arbitrage, where you're going to multiple countries and getting the best talent at the best price. And so that's what we're helping people do.
So if someone was getting interested now, what would, just a ballpark figure, what would they expect to start? What would prices start from, roughly?
Yeah, so, you can get a full-time person for roughly $1,747 a month. So when you think of this, there's 172 hours. It's roughly $10 an hour, so $10 US an hour. And, you think about this, again, we talked about turnover being the enemy of scale. And the reality is what helps a company scale was simply creating leverage and process inside your business. So, and people, it's not that hard. It's actually, it can be fun. I actually really enjoy it when I do it for my own business, because then I know things are being handled correctly.
And how multi-skilled would a person be?
Well, we don't do multi-skilled, so that's an entrepreneurial skill. Like, I get to wear a lot of hats because I own the business, I know the business really well, and I'm really good at being average to mediocre at everything and knowing what excellence looks like, right? So this is the entrepreneur's kind of, I don't know, it's a challenge for us because we think we're great at everything and we're just simply not. So the way we work, and this is, all based on a client scenario. I love to tell this story because it's really a great one. We have this friend, his name's Nolly Williams, and he's a speaker / coach, and he travels, the country. And I think, he's spent years where he's on the road for like 300 days a year. This guy's just a road warrior guy. And he owned this technology platform. And the problem with the technology platform was it was older. It was built back in the early 2000s. And it still worked, but it wasn't. There'd been technology had kind of outpaced what he had originally built. And he and I were in a conversation. We were sharing the stage at a couple places, and he's like, I'm really thinking about just shutting this business down. And I started asking questions like, why? And his biggest challenge was he couldn't find somebody who would run the business because he was on the road so often. So he'd gone through a bunch of employees, and he couldn't find somebody who was going to treat the business like it was their own business and really work it. And he just didn't have time or energy. And because of that technology, it outpaced his platform. He knew he was going to have to invest $500,000 to kind of upgrade it. And so once I found out his biggest challenge was leverage and talent, I immediately said, man, we've been friends for 10 years. We've shared the stage across the country. Would you trust me to help you with that issue? And he, about 6 years ago, he did. He hired a guy named Chris, who is a phenomenal virtual professional. And hopefully maybe Chris can listen to this later once you post it live. But in an interview a couple of years ago, we interviewed Chris and Nolly and said, so what happened? And Chris says, I treat the business as if it's my own business. And I make decisions based on what's best for the business. And so Chris is the service and support person for this platform. And because Chris got hired, they hired some salespeople, they've done some marketing, Nolly's invested back in the platform. And since hiring us, they've had a 3x on their revenue and growth. And so for me, that's an amazing story. The entrepreneur was about to give up, and we were able to serve up some good high caliber talent and keep that thing going. And now he has hundreds of users on this platform, and it's helping those businesses grow. So for us, it's a win-win-win, right? We're helping an entrepreneur, and that entrepreneur gets to help others. And that's just the best feeling ever.
And so I guess the people that, you mentioned before about that you put an ad and there was 30,000 respondents. And so I imagine in the Philippines, there's people able to do almost any sort of skill that people are looking for.
Yeah, and again, we don't just service technology companies. We've serviced, there's been a boat broker in Florida that we've helped, insurance companies. There's a professional employment company in New York that we help, marketing ad agencies. So we, we aren't limited, like we don't have a particular product line. What we do is if you need administrative help, like scheduling your appointments, managing your calendar, just making sure projects are getting done on time and keeping timelines and maybe facilitating delivery or communication. I like to call the administrative folks like traffic and delivery. They're out there moving people around. In fact, you got an example, Tony L, who is a virtual professional on our team. She booked this interview. And she's in the Philippines, and she's part of our PR and media. Her job is to reach out to folks like you who have interesting topics, exceeding expectations. What a great topic. And help us get on your show. And so, the reality is if you need help in marketing, we've got you. If you need help in sales, like creating opportunities within your business, that's another opportunity. So there's a lot of different avenues for entrepreneurs. And the reality is the hardest part is probably creating the outcome or the job description. Some people might know it as a job description. We prefer outcomes. But we help you through that. So that's probably the hardest part.
So how would it work? So say, for example, a company, they needed some help with admin stuff. They needed some help with maybe some PR, some marketing, and they also needed maybe some design work. So would that be three different full-time people, or how would that work?
Well, it just depends your need at the particular time. One of my favorites, Tony, this is a great story, and everybody who's listening who is in their 40s to 60s will probably remember this. Back in the 1990s, IBM almost went away. IBM's they had multiple changes in CEOs. They were going through strategy change after strategy change. The board finally decides to hire Arthur Andersen and Accenture. So Arthur Andersen is going in and looking at the financial model and what they're doing on the finance, and Accenture is looking at their org chart. And this is a really important point, Tony, and this is the most, if you're scaling and growing a business, you can control almost everything through your organizational chart. And the way you do that is, what's the job description? What systems are they in? Like what if you're in Salesforce as your CRM, then, and you're in sales, then your job as a sales rep, you're using, Salesforce and maybe LinkedIn to reach out to people. Those are your systems. And then what's the outcome for that role? In our particular, business, we like to set activity outcomes. So you've got to have a certain amount of appointments every single day where you're meeting one-on-one with somebody through video, and you're trying to help them scale and grow their business. That's an example of how you would write an org chart. That might be what we call the org chart of the future, because it has everything you need, right? And if you just do that org chart, you can kind of see who's on your team today, and then who's on your team, who do you need to be on your team tomorrow in order to double your business?
Okay, so you're not just giving people one person, you're giving them a team of people.
Well, we want to help you scale your business. And we go back to the IBM. So Accenture comes in and they do a time analysis and an org chart analysis of IBM's thing. And what they found out is one of their previous CFO or CEOs was actually promoted from a CFO perspective. So he was a number cruncher who got put into the CEO role. And then he implemented a bunch of changes for the sales team, where the sales team had to do a ton of administrative work. And what they were finding is that their sales team was spending 70% of their day, doing administrative work that was necessary, but not driving revenue.
Well, and also probably if you're doing something you don't enjoy doing, it takes 10 times as long because you've got no heart in it.
Yeah, and who among us, if you're listening right now and you're a salesperson, I hate paperwork. It's not my thing. I like doing what you and I are doing right now, talking, right?
Yeah.
And connecting. And so Accenture comes back, sits with the board. The board's paying them millions of dollars, and Accenture's simple one-lined, solution is for every 2 salespeople, hire 1 administrative assistant. And the business has transformed, and IBM's still around today, and all of that.
So someone who's listening to this, who's got a very small business, they're not making huge profits, but there's things they need to do, and they don't enjoy doing them. So they'd be able to hire. Well, they come to you, and they get a team of people to do various projects that they don't like. If I've understood it correctly.
Yeah, I mean, again, we do serve small business. Our sweet spot is that middle of the road business, like $1 million to $10 million in revenue, and we help people who are below $1 million. There's no doubt about that. But those businesses are still challenged, understanding their value proposition, who they're marketing, to their ideal client. They have some service and delivery, and they're still kind of growing. And we've helped folks that have $500,000 in annual revenue, but our sweet spot is that $1 million to $10 million in revenue. Those are the guys and gals that we can really kind of help supercharge. And you're absolutely right. We start with the org chart, understand who's on the team right now, and then who do they need in order to double or scale their business? Like who needs to be, and this kind of work, by the way, is very simple gap analysis. All the major coaches, they'll tell you to close your eyes and think of a brighter future. The grass is greener, the blue's bluer, the birds are chirping, and you're in the shade. That classic, what would have to happen for everything to be great in your business? And then we start working backwards. What do we need to do today, or who do we need to hire today in order to solve that issue?
So would you be able to estimate how many different people you are using in the Philippines at the moment?
Oh yeah, no, we don't. I mean, we keep track. So in the 12 years, we've helped over 5,000 entrepreneurs, just like you, Tony, and just like your audience. If you are intent on growing and scaling a business, I talk to CEOs across the country all the time. And when you ask them what's their biggest challenge, hands down, it's going to be getting talent. Like that's how you're talking to a CEO or an entrepreneur, is like, if I just had the right players on my team, I would win the medal every time, So that's what we do for people, much like I did for myself after my honeymoon. I came back and I was like, gosh, I really got to change something here in order to really create the future that I want. And so if you're in that process.
So the natural question there is, are you still married?
Yeah, in fact, next month we celebrate our 10-year anniversary, and here's the other thing, and 2 kids, 10-year anniversary. I am still involved intimately in this business. But I am the CEO. I don't take the sales meetings or I don't do the sales meetings anymore. I'm not focused on delivery right now. And all of that, I can credit all of that to that initial curiosity. I wonder, can I use virtual professionals for this? Can I do this? And I was talking to a good friend and client a couple weeks ago, and we're talking about the challenges people have in implementing a virtual blended model. And here's a stat that, if you're listening, if you're like, this guy Daniel, he's entertaining, but I think he's crazy. This is a stat. By the year 2027, over half of the U.S. workforce will be virtual. And I'm sure it's a very similar stat for where you are in the world. So if you think about, they will be virtual in some working capacity, meaning it could be they work virtually one day a week or several days a week, or the entire week is virtual. So, this study, it's a legitimate study, and what's happening in our future is this is just the reality of where business is going. It's not a question anymore. And, we were at 1% a couple of years ago of the U.S. population. We're at 3% now. And that prediction is to be well over 50% by 2027.
You were telling me before about, was it a famous coach who loves virtual pros?
Oh, yeah. His name's Bob, and he's got a great story. He had a huge team. I'm talking about 30 coaches, coaching in Canada and the U.S., always on the stage, always traveling. He had a CEO who was running his company, an ops person. And I was just on the phone with him today, and he's like, Daniel, we've been a client for like 7-8 years, and I can tell you, I only want to hire virtual people moving forward. And that is what, if you're listening, that is what it's like once you find this blended model that we love, which is some of your folks are in your office and doing the high value stuff, the sales, the leadership, the operation management, and then your delivery folks and your support staff, your coordinators, your project managers, your folks that are kind of helping your business actually deliver its product or service can all be virtual. And that's what we call a blended model. That's the model that the major Fortune 500s have kind of gone to. And statistically, companies report that they see a 16% increase in productivity with virtual employees. Why is that? Well, there's no water cooler. There's no meetings that last for 4 hours. There's none of those distractions that you have inside of an office. You can just kind of grind and focus and do what you're responsible to do.
So typically, people that are hiring these professionals are getting far more than they expected.
Absolutely. In fact, exceeding expectations. Why I love this topic is because it has everything to do with our origin story. If you're listening and you're an entrepreneur, I was thinking, well, who do I need to hire back in the day? And it was really important to me that I hired somebody who felt like a partner, was a teammate, was 100% in, because this was my baby. I was building a business that didn't exist, and I needed real people who were 100% committed, right? And so we coined our kind of mission statement, which is for our virtual professionals to be indispensable for our clients. And that word indispensable carries everything that you can imagine with it, right? Talk about exceeding expectations. Imagine who's indispensable in your life. That's a big challenge. And so our measurement when we ask somebody to hire one of our people is, hey, is this person indispensable? Can you imagine running your business without them? And when they say, no, I couldn't imagine running it without them, that's how we know we've won.
Do you ever give any sort of training to your guys in the Philippines, or does that ever come up, anything like that?
Oh yeah. One of the coolest things is that we have our own online platform where we have over 200 kind of training modules that our folks have access to, and they can do those modules at any time, whether it's before or after or during an employment kind of scenario. But we've also created a virtual playbook. So when you hire us, the biggest challenge that we had is like, well, and I'm just going to give it to your listeners and tell them exactly how to get it and where to download it, and hopefully they can use it regardless if you hire us or not. This whole idea of a blended model and virtual professionals, it's here to stay, guys. It's 100% what's going to happen. So if they text SVP, so that's Scale with Virtual Professionals, to 61996, we're going to send you a copy of our book, which is Scale Your Business with Virtual Professionals. And in there, there's an entire chapter devoted on the virtual playbook, like how to make this work, how to train your in-house team to be okay with it and love it, how to train your virtual staff on what the in-house team needs and how to collaborate with people, what systems are really important, what processes need to be in place. But having done this 5,000 times and over 12 years, and I was telling you, Tony, before the call, look, I put my heart and soul into this book because I know how hard it is to make that transition. And so I wanted to have a very easy reference guide for anybody who is thinking about virtual professionals as an opportunity for their business so that they succeed, because I really believe in the mission here. Of just making the world, impacting the world in a positive way. And when you're giving jobs to folks in developing countries, you're changing their entire life. You're changing the entire future of their family's life. So it's a really important piece for us.
And so you mentioned the text number just now. Would that same number work for people that are outside the States?
That is a great question. And you guys, if you're listening and you're not in the U.S. and you'd like a copy of the book, just please email sales, and it's SALES at MyOutDesk.com, sales at MyOutDesk.com, and just say, hey, in the subject line, give me a copy of the book.
Right.
That's as easy as it needs to be. But I don't know if it would work, actually, Tony. You and I might have to test that on another time. Yeah.
Well, I'll put a link. Well, I'll put both links, the text number and also the email address, in the show notes, so people can, if it doesn't work the text way, you can just do the email way. So, and on the book, you were talking. We were talking before about the challenges of writing books. So, you've been doing this for the last couple of years, you said.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that what we wanted to do was, I'm a big fan. If you're listening to this and you're like, this guy, I don't know about Daniel. Here's the whole methodology that I've used forever in my business. I hate the folks who, are telling you how to do something but have never done it. Meaning they're like the coaches who kind of study the problem rather than living in the problem. So this book was really written with the idea, I'm an entrepreneur, our clients are entrepreneurs, they're in the weeds doing the work, meaning they're scaling businesses with virtual professionals, and they've put together the right way to do it, the right tricks. And so we have a ton of scale accelerators, meaning little tricks and tips. We have a scale community where you guys can go and kind of ask questions and do stuff. And then just scale frameworks. There's a lot of things that working virtually it's just a little different than working with somebody in your office that you can touch and feel. And yet you still have to build culture. You still have to add value to people. You still have to lead them and lead them, the right way. So, we provide all those kind of, all that learning of 12 years of how to do this and do it, successfully, because again, turnover is the enemy of scale for any entrepreneur, and you really want to be able to do this correctly. And so that's why we wrote the book. It's to help everybody.
Are you familiar with Chris Ducker?
Oh yeah. He's a great. In fact, I almost he was actually one of the earlier voices in the virtual assistant world, and he's in the UK, and he does a great job of teaching others how to use virtual professionals also. What's really interesting is we have a very different business model, he and I, but I have a lot of respect for the guy. And he and I have never met, meaning I've never, we've never talked or met, but he definitely has a strong message and business model. And, I've been an admirer from far.
Well, Daniel, what are your sort of just general thoughts about exceeding expectations?
Oh man, it's everything, and for our clients, we got really, I think it's an interesting topic, which is why I was so excited to be on this show. as an entrepreneur, we are in that process of scaling, and there's all these valleys. And so if you're listening, this is another one of those Daniel's crazy, I should probably write this down and digest it later. But there are different business kind of valleys, and I like to call them valleys of death. So that 0 to 1 million is the first valley. It's the hardest valley to get through, and it's really hard to create, a product from nowhere in a market that doesn't know you and really sell to that market. But once you cross that $1 million market, congratulations, you have a real business. And 96% of businesses in the US, they never cross the $1 million mark. So Tony, I mean, imagine that if you're running a race and 96% of the people who run the race never cross the finish line, that's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
And that's business, and so only 4% get above 1 million, go between 1 and 10 million, and then 0.4%, so 0.04 ever actually go above $10 million in revenue. So there's these valleys of death, and when you're a salesperson and you're an entrepreneur, it's relatively easy to get over that $1 million hump. What's really challenging is once you get there, you realize you have to service clients. Whether you're selling a product or a service or you're a manufacturer, then all of a sudden exceeding expectations and having clients really, really matters. You start, I'll give you some methodology that's in the book, Tony. This is one of my favorite things. We have this process called the 3 R's. So we're very client-driven, client-focused. The 3 R's are reviews, recommendations, and referrals. So we measure a client's success based on whether or not they recommend us, whether or not, and by recommending, meaning will they come on a show like you and I are doing right now and talk about their story using our product. Reviews, will they go to Google and Facebook? If you look at our reviews, we have over 200 5-star reviews, more than any other virtual professional full-time service out there. Nobody else has that many reviews. So we have over 200 5-star reviews, and that's simply because we have a process in place so that when our client is super happy, we ask them to do a review, right? And then referrals. There have been years that 70% of our business comes from referrals. And that really is when you have people telling other people about your product or your service and your company and your story and the vision and how you serve others, that's how you've really exceeded expectations. Because in our business, it's a belly-to-belly business. We're a sales organization. So the more people that are talking about this, the more opportunities we have for our business and the more opportunities we create for our virtual professionals. So that's just one example of how we take the client expectation and really kind of focus on what makes them happy and what makes them, you basically refer us business and help us grow our business. I don't know if that's helpful.
It is, and I love the expression belly to belly business. It's one I've never heard before.
Well, us crazy Americans, Daniel,
if people want to find out more about you, where would they go to?
Yeah, go to MyOutDesk.com, jump on our website, look at our reviews. We have blogs there. We have videos. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We're on all the social channels. And it's just MyOutDesk.com. The beautiful thing, too, because we're in exceeding expectations, right? One thing that we've done, Tony, and I think you'll love this, and I think this is probably where we would end our call today. We put the client's outcome as the very first and most important piece of our sales call and our delivery. Once we deliver the service and when we initially make the first call, our first interaction face-to-face with a client is, hey, what would make this an exceptional call for you today? What would serve you at the highest level? So now we're focused on them, right? And then when we decide to work together, we have something called an outcome statement. So we're not having like a job description that is check the boxes, but we're actually saying, I need you to do all these things, and it needs to result in this amount of revenue in growth or in money saved or in a higher client experience. And so, or in time saved. So we measure every single interaction that we have with clients through an outcome statement. Did we meet your expectations, client? Did we exceed the expectations? That's what really matters to us, because that's what makes long-term marriages like what we have work for entrepreneurs.
Well, just before we finish, Daniel, you mentioned, I know you got a quotation that you really like. Do you want to tell us that?
Yeah, it's a really simple one. Either you have an assistant or you are an assistant. And that is a stark conversation for any entrepreneur, really. If you are doing $10 an hour work, then what you're saying is that is my worth as an entrepreneur. And let me give you a little bit more context. When we talk to our clients about what their highest dollar productive activity is, hands down, it's always serving clients, selling clients, and basically creating more business. And our clients talk to us, and they tell us that their hourly rate can be thousands of dollars an hour when they're in sales capacity, meaning when they're selling their service, talking to clients, servicing clients, just loving on their clients, right? Well, why on earth, if you're worth thousands of dollars an hour when you're selling, why on earth would you answer your own emails or schedule, or go on your calendar and schedule calls or check in on a project management thing or, post on social media or do prospecting? I mean, all of those things can be handed to a virtual professional. They'll likely do a better job than you are because that's their one job. And then you can focus on really growing revenue, scaling your business, and basically having your dream life.
Absolutely. Well, Daniel, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for your time today.
I've really appreciated your time, Tony. And if you're listening, man, I hope you can scale your business and you might try virtual professionals. I think you'd be a winner. Fantastic. Thanks, Daniel. Next week, episode 59 is with Mike Jezoshek. He's an accountant, and he gives us some stories and tells us about how accountants can give a much better experience for their clients and exceed their clients' expectations, and also how to make the world of accounting a little bit more interesting than the perception many people have of it. So that is next week with Mike Jezoshek. Hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. Please do share it with someone who you think may get value from this episode. Leave a review for us. That would be fantastic. And I hope you have a great week, and see you next week.